Economy is one of the most underrated topics in this game. If you don't have a good economy, you won't be able to produce the units you want to produce. You won't be able, as a result, to expand as quick, and you won't be able to recover your losses as quick. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to build the best economy so that you don't have to struggle with this. And if you have the best economy, you have a lot higher chance of winning your game. So first of all, let me show you how your economy is doing compared to other nations. So if you go to newspaper in your phone, you can just click more and go to newspaper. So every 3 interval days, if you scroll down, you can see at the end how your economy is doing compared to everyone. You want to be at least in the top 3, preferably top 1. As you can see, I'm first place, and I'm being the second guy by more than 25,000 tons, which is quite good. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do this, and I'm going to put in single steps so it's easy for you to understand. So step number 1 is to max your arms industries in your cities. This is super important. This is probably what will boost your economy the largest. If you have a level 5 industry, it's going to boost your resource production by 50%. Make sure you do this in all your homeland cities, especially the ones you lack resources on. For example, as you can see, I'm very low in electronics, so I maxed the arms industry in Glasgow, and that was my first priority when I started the game. And then later in the game, I maxed every other arms industry out. That way, I don't have to run low on other resources such as supplies and components later in the game, as these resources stack on top of each other. So make sure you do that, because for example, you normally start about 1,000 production per day. If you get arms industry, max it out and get to level 5, then that's another 50%. So you'll be producing 1,500 a day, which is a massive boost. So make sure to do that. For the arms industries, you can also do this in the cities that you have annexed and max your arms industry there. I wouldn't suggest doing this on cities you conquered. Just keep it to the cities you annexed, and most importantly, your homeland cities. Just this arms industry thing will massively upgrade your economy. A lot of people do not do this, so make sure to do this and you have a massive advantage. Alright, next up, you also want to max your local industries out. Now this is a bit more complex, but I'll show you how to do it. Alright, I'm going to show you guys how to do this very quickly. So all you have to do is look for a province near your homeland that has a resource icon. So for example, Faroe Island. These provinces basically produce some resources. If you build local industries in them and max it out, it's going to give you a massive boost of 66%, which is quite a bit if it adds up, and it only costs some supplies and some components. So try and do this in every province near your homeland, especially the ones that produce the resources you lack. Sometimes I see people that build these local industries thousands of kilometers away from their homeland. I would avoid doing this, and this is essentially because of your morale. The farther away that you are from your capital, the less morale you will have, and therefore the less resources you will produce. We will talk about this later on more in detail, but the point is you don't want to be building local industries in provinces that are so far away from your land. But yeah, make sure to build these local industries in the provinces next to your homeland, especially the ones that produce the resources you lack. That will help you a ton. Next up, another thing that will help you massively is annexing cities. So for example, in this UK game, I have annexed Calais, I have annexed Dublin, and I have also annexed Backfordshire, or however you pronounce that. As you guys can see, I'm very low in electronics, so I annex these cities because they produce electronics. When you annex a city, it basically gives you the ability to produce other buildings, such as army bases to mobilize units. And secondly, it also gives you a 25% resource production boost. Bonus, there's just a few guidelines that you want to do if you're going to start to annex cities. First of all, you do not want to do this in the early game. You have way too little resources, and you do not want to use this to annex cities as it's very expensive. So make sure to use those resources and other things such as arms industries. But anyways, once you get to the mid game, it's a great time to start annexing cities. So for example, when I annexed Calais, I had to pay all these resources, but as a result, I got a 25% boost, and now I've got more electronics they're producing per day, which is very important since I'm lacking electronics. However, when annexing cities, just make sure that you annex cities that are actually worthwhile. For example, I annexed Calais, Dublin, and all these cities that build electronics because I'm lacking electronics. I wouldn't annex cities that build components or build raw materials or fuel or supplies because I'm already high on those resources, so I don't want to waste my resources on doing that, if that makes sense. Make sure you annex cities that produce the resources you're lacking. Secondly, you want these cities to be as close as possible to your capital. As I mentioned before, when cities are close to your capital, they have higher morale. And a higher morale leads to buildings getting built faster, units getting mobilized quicker, and also a higher resource production. So make sure you do it. For example, if I'm playing the UK, I do not want to annex a city all the way in Belarus because it's very far. I want to try and, stay close to their homeland and annex cities near there. Also, once you annex these cities, you can also use them to mobilize units. So for example, in Dublin, I'm mobilizing submarines. Here in this Iceland city, I'm also planning on mobilizing submarines. And in Calais, I'm mobilizing infantry. And also, once you annex these cities, I recommend building, the level 5 arms industry. It will help you a ton for the economy. So for example, Dublin's already producing 825 electronics compared to our occupied city that's only producing 238, which is, almost 4 times as much. So make sure to annex cities, max those arms industries, and then you can build the buildings that you need in order to mobilize units. Next up, I have one of the biggest tips. This is by far the biggest tip that will help you reach the economy that you want, and it's simply expanding. If you expand more, you'll be conquering a lot of cities that produce resources and a lot of provinces that produce resources. So you want to make sure to expand as quickly as possible. If you expand, your economy is going to boom a lot because it's like, every province produces some money, every city produces some resources, and all of this is just going to add up. I mean, for example, Warsaw produces 250, right? Which is nothing by itself. But if I add 10 electronic cities, that's 2,500 electronics a day, which is a massive boost. I mean, for example, Germany has level 5 industries in all of his homeland. He has, he's annexed some cities, he's got local industries, but I still massively beat him in the economy side because I have conquered a lot more than him. As you can see, he's only 5th place because of this, and I'm 1st place. And as you can see, I've got, almost double the cities as the next guy up. So make sure to expand as quickly as possible, especially in the early game. Expanding if there was one thing in this video that I had to say for boosting your economy, is simply just expand and get bigger, conquer cities and occupy provinces, and your economy will just flourish. So make sure to do that. Alright, another tip that I don't see people talking much about that will also play a massive effect on your economy is your morale. So basically, our Supremacy Conflict of Nations has our equation that basically links your morale to your production. So if I have a high morale, I'm going to be producing more resources every single day. So Conflict of Nations basically has this equation that sorts that out. In conclusion, is if you have a high morale, you're going to produce more resources. So you want to make sure to have a high morale. Now there's a couple ways to do this. Now your morale gets affected by several different things. So first of all, we got civilian casualties caused and how many nations you are at war with, and also your enemy borders. But that doesn't really matter unless an enemy nation is bordering you. But anyways, to improve these two things, for the the one of being at war, just be at war with less nations. When you attack someone, you want to finish them. You don't have like 50 ongoing wars, because that's gonna destroy your morale completely. Because every war you are at war with will deduce your morale by 2 points. So if you're at war with 10 nations, that'll be 20 points less. So my morale from Glasgow will go from 100% to 80%, which is a massive downgrade, and that'll lead to less resources being produced. And not only does your morale affect your homeland cities, but also affects all your morale all around the country. And you're going to be dealing with rogues, insurgents, etc. And as for the civilian casualties caused, the trick for this is to not bomb cities with your ships or with bombers, because that will be affecting your civilian casualties. So make sure not to do that, or you're going to struggle a lot in morale. And another thing with morale is that when you have a higher morale, your buildings are going to get produced faster, your units are going to mobilize faster. So it also helps in that way a lot. So make sure to look after your morale. It's super important. If you have a low morale, you're going to be massively struggling with your economy. So make sure to protect that at all costs. Now, another big tip that I have for you is your headquarters. Now, as you can see, your headquarters basically give you a morale boost. So your headquarters give you a 25% morale boost. So if you have a city at 75%, it goes to 100%. Now, you can be strategic with your headquarters, as you can basically relocate your headquarters to anywhere. So for example, in the UK, as you all know, probably the capital is London, right? But London produces rare materials. I'm very high on rare materials, so I see no point. So what I'm going to do is I relocated my headquarters to Glasgow, where it produces electronics. By doing this, I improved the morale of Glasgow, which as a result, I'll be gaining a lot more electronics as a result of this. So it's a very strategic thing to do in mid-game. Just relocate your headquarters to the city that produces the resources you're low on. And also, if you can have your headquarters near 2 other cities. For example, in London, it's only really close to Calais. supplies, Plymouth and Manchester. Whereas if I build in Glasgow, it's close to Belfast, Dublin, Newcastle and Aberdeen. So by doing that, I'm also able to improve the morale of these cities, because basically your morale is also dictated by how close they are to your headquarters. So if you want to improve their morale in one area, you can also strategically relocate your headquarters to that place. So yeah, I thought I might talk about that, and that's a great tip that a lot of people don't really use. Now another tip I also have is another building that you can build, which does a massive effect both to morale and to your economy, and that is bunkers. Bunkers are extremely underrated. So basically bunkers do is to improve your morale performance, and as we talked previously, a high morale leads to a high economy and higher resources, and you can basically improve your morale and manipulate it by using underground bunkers. Now when you build that underground bunker level 5, it gives you a 50% morale performance boost. So if I had a level 5 bunker in Dublin, which I'm trying to achieve now, I would have a 100% morale, and that's going to lead to a massive production of resources in Dublin, right? However, you just want to be strategic with these buildings. Don't spam them early on. I'll do this in the later game, around like day 30 you can start doing this, maybe a bit earlier, maybe like day 25, and make sure to build those bunkers in your homeland city, especially the ones that produce the resources you learn, which is what I'm doing, which I'm gonna do in Dublin. I would also do it in Glasgow, but there's no point because my morale is already 100%, so a bunker's not gonna affect it much. And then once I've got these morales at 100%, then I won't have to worry about that, and I can go building them in other cities. So make sure to use bunkers. They are super underrated. They don't only help for your economy, they also help to reduce garrison damage and a lot of other things. So make sure to do that, and it's also quite cheap. It's normally just supplies, components, and some fuel. So make sure to spam abuse bunkers. They're super underrated. Now another thing that I want to talk about that I see a lot of new people doing, especially like mid-experienced people, is not focusing your cities. This is super important for your economy. So for example, in London, I want to build the Air Force. In Plymouth, I'm building cruisers. In Dublin, I'm building submarines. In Manchester, I'm building MROs, right? Now, you see a lot of new people and mid-experienced people that basically just build every single unit in London. So, they'll have a level 5 air base, a level 5 army base, a level 5 naval base, right? But you don't want to do this, firstly, because building these buildings is going to cost you resources, right? And you're going to lose a lot of resources, by building a level 5 naval base or, all this stuff. So what you want to do is focus one city on one unit. So for example, in London, I'm producing stealth strike fighters, in Belfast stealth air superiority fighters, and then here I'm producing ground units and so on. So make sure you want to do this. You want to keep one city focused to one type of unit, or at least to one type of ground unit, and another city for air units, and another city for naval units, right? That way you don't waste resources on all the other useless buildings when you can just do this. So if you're doing that, make sure to stop it, and that'll save you a lot of resources in the long term. Now another thing that is super underrated and I rarely see anyone talking about is building naval and air bases. So when you build a naval base, it actually improves your economy. Now, not that much, but it does help. So it gives you a 20% resource production boost, which actually adds up when you think about it. And same with our level 5 air bases, 25%, so it's actually a bit more. So now these buildings will actually improve your resource production. That's why I kind of specialized by building, level 4 naval base in Plymouth, because I was low on supplies at the start of the game, and I was low on rare materials at the start of the game, so that's why I produced these buildings there. I wouldn't do this just because you want the 20% resource production boost, because it's not going to compensate, for the cost of, building a level 5 airport. However, if there's cities you are wanting resources low on, you might want to build your air force there and therefore upgrade your level 5 air base there to get your 25% resource production. So you might want to, be strategic and abuse this, because it will help you massively. And you got to remember, for the economy, all these little things add up, right? So if you want to have an economy like this, or be the first one, make sure to do all these little things. This is your full guide to economy. By implementing all these tips, your economy is going to grow massively, especially if you combine all of this. And yeah, if you guys think I missed anything out, or you guys want another video next, or have any video ideas, then let me know in the comments. And if you guys have any questions, then feel free to join the Discord server. The link will be in the description, and you guys can just tag me in the Discord server with your questions, and I'll answer them as soon as I can. And subscribe for more videos like this. Good luck.